democratic India must grow rapidly to meet the aspirations of 1.25 billion people.
The mere announcement of India having 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022 has been big.
India making this move could be pivotal for the whole industry and for the whole world.
For India, renewable energy is the new source of oil.
For the renewable energy to really be useful, we got to capture the solar, wind and hydro all three together, especially the way the Indian Peninsula has been blessed with.
India is leapfrogging many stages of the renewable energy evolution in the country.
The world is being battered by extreme weather events with increasing frequency. Its impact is only too real for India. Climate change and its devastating effects is no longer a theory.
2013, 2014, 2015. If you look at these 3 years, we had deficit rainfall. By 2016, close to 18 states in India went through drought-like situation. There were other states which went through flood-like situation. 2/3 of our population is still dependent on climate-centric economic sectors. Whether it is agriculture, forestry, fisheries, things that we have to do with water, forest and land. And these sectors are going to be deeply impacted by the changing climate.
Climate change is caused by the rising levels of carbon dioxide, or CO2, in our atmosphere. CO2 traps heat, leading to rise in the global temperatures. The temperature rise, in turn, affects weather patterns, leading to extreme events. More fossil fuel we burn, the more CO2 we release in the atmosphere. Temperature rise caused due to such massive burning of fossil fuels is measured against the global temperature before industrialization, also called pre-industrial period. Scientists want to limit the temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Any rise above 2 degrees would result in irreversible changes to the environment.
The 2 degree has caught the imagination of people, but the fact is it is a political agreement. Scientifically speaking, even at 1.5 degrees, temperature increase compared to the pre-industrial era, which is about 1850 onwards. Many communities, poor communities, especially communities who are dependent on ecosystem for their survival, many vulnerable ecosystems like Sundarbans or other vulnerable ecosystems like Himalayas are going to be deeply impacted with this 1.5 degree temperature increase.
Global bodies like the UNFCCC bring together national leaders to chalk out a strategy to combat climate change. Efforts revolve around speedy deployment of smarter, greener technology that reduce carbon emissions. This includes transforming electricity generation, which in 2014 contributed to 25% of all carbon emissions in the world. That's why renewable energy is so crucial to cut down carbon emissions. Developing economies like China and India are hungry for electricity and therefore are among the world's largest emitters of greenhouse gases. There's global pressure on India to implement green technology. But deploying such technology can have a crippling effect on a developing economy. That in turn affects the poorest members of society, many of whom don't have access to energy. But something unexpected happened in the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Paris. Prime Minister Narendra Modi set out a bold vision to power India's future.
By 2030, we will reduce emissions by 33 to 35% of 2005 levels and produce 40% of our power from non-fossil fuels.
According to estimates, that would mean generating nearly 340 gigawatts of power from non-fossil fuels or renewable energy. To put that in perspective, this figure is higher than India's total power generation capacity today of about 320 gigawatts. So how will India pull this off?
We will achieve it by expanding renewable energy, by adding 175 gigawatts of renewable energy generation by 2022.
Well, there was a real flip in this country. A decade ago, you'd come here and the attitude was, hey, it's our turn to grow dirty. You got your turn, you in the West. Now it's our turn, so don't lecture us. And then I think a couple things happened. One, as the country was growing, the air got dirtier and dirtier and simply became unlivable. So that path simply was not possible or sustainable in the long run. Second thing that happened here was innovation. Indian companies started to emerge in the solar area, the wind area, the battery area, the hydro area, that were quite innovative in producing clean energy. And people began to realize that, wow, not only is this more healthy for us physically, but this could be financially healthy.
Benefits of tapping into inexhaustible and clean sources of energy, such as the sun or wind, is apparent. However, on a large scale, these sources of power were considered impractical. The cost of renewable energy was much higher than conventional sources such as coal and gas. Importantly, the reliability of such power was always called into question. After all, solar power can only be generated when the sun shines. Wind turbines turn only when wind blows. And hydro plants are dependent on river flow. However, a new generation of technology is not only making renewable energy not only reliable, but also reducing the cost of generation to a fraction of what it was just 5 years ago. Despite all this, India faces a tremendous challenge to bring its vision to fruition. To help meet its targets, gigantic renewable energy plants are being set up across the country. These plants are set to change the face of renewable energy in India forever. November 2015, global leaders meet at Paris to take decisive steps to curb global warming. India reveals a bold new vision of generating 175 gigawatts of power through renewable sources of energy.
So the mere announcement of India having 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022 has been big. Let me say it has been massive.
A large chunk of the 175 gigawatts will come from solar power. The rest coming from wind, biogas and small hydro projects. A big part of India's plan is to construct huge facilities, designated ultra-mega solar parks. With a capacity of 1 gigawatt, the flag bearer of India's Mission Solar is in Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh. It is among the world's largest solar power parks and also the first solar park that will be connected to the national grid.
Not only for Andhra Pradesh, It is one of the biggest park in the world in 5,000 acres of land, and also 7,000 crores they are investing now. It is a major breakthrough in renewable energy.
The Kurnool project of this scale was never planned or implemented globally. There were other projects of a scale of between 10 to 25 megawatts, and so the scale of this project was pretty unique.
Greenko, India's largest owner and operator of renewable energy projects, with over 3 gigawatts operational capacity in solar, wind, and hydro domains spread across India. But Kurnool proved to be the company's most challenging project. Typically, 5 acres are needed to generate 1 megawatt of solar power. So the 500 megawatt plant that Greenko is developing is spread across 2,766 acres. More than 2.5 million solar panels have been installed on this area.
If you were to line up these modules end to end, back to back, it would be a 5,000 kilometer long line.
That's like driving from Srinagar to Kanyakumari and nearly all the way back up to Nagpur. Solar panels are made of a class of materials called photovoltaics. The electrons of such materials enter a high energy state when hit by the energy contained in sunlight. This leads to electricity generation. The form of this electricity is called direct current. However, to power day-to-day appliances and machines, this electricity needs to be converted to alternating current or AC. After the conversion, around 5,000 kilometers of cables that have been buried in the ground to transmit this current generated by the solar panels to the nearest substation. The length of the trenches for the cable, 500 kilometers. That's like digging a trench from Kurnool to Hyderabad. Gigawatt-scale national grid-connected solar parks, like the one in Kurnool, represent a tectonic shift in the way we think about renewable energy.
From just a source to reduce carbon, it has become a mainstream energy source as it became competitive with fossil fuel sources, and renewable energy is now a significant part of the economic activity in most countries globally.
Until recently, replacing coal or gas-based energy with renewable sources was unthinkable. Renewable energy was simply too expensive for a developing economy like India. However, renewable energy tariffs have fallen drastically in the last 7 years. In 2010, solar power tariff was around Rs 12 per unit. The solar power tariff at Kurnool is 3 times cheaper, a mere Rs 4 per unit. And the prices continue to fall. This fall is triggered partly by the falling cost of technology.
I think foremost would be the fall in the module prices. So they have fallen from about 1.2 per watt in 2013-14 to about 35 cents now. And in fact, our expectation is that they will continue to fall to close to about 25 to 27 cents in the next few quarters maybe. I think equally importantly is that the risks in many of these projects are going down because of the government incentive.
There are 2 major risks for solar power players. Acquisition of thousands of acres of land and finding buyers for the power generated by the plant. Both these issues can be addressed through changes in policy. That's exactly what India has done.
Now, if you look at the solar parks, they provide you with the land. So land availability is not a constraint. Along with that, the government has ensured that all the key solar parks that come through, they will be adequately connected to the grid through transmission via the green energy corridors.
What this means is that solar power operators like Greenko don't have to worry about selling the power they generate. They have assurance that the power they generate will be bought by a central organization. That in turn creates a virtuous cycle. Banks and other financial institutions are willing to lend money at lower interest rates for projects operating out of solar parks.
Imagine that a country of 1.3 billion people makes the kind of ambitious commitment to clean energy that India has. Clean tech is going to become cheaper, it's going to become smarter, and then it'll become more available to more people, and the curve will get steeper and steeper. So I think India making this move could be pivotal for the whole industry and for the whole world.
Generating energy at a gigawatt scale and feeding the grid brings with it a huge challenge. Renewable energy sources like solar, wind or hydro are unpredictable or seasonal. However, grid stability depends on reliable and predictable power supply. Without that, there would be a mismatch between supply and demand, leading to power outages. So how can renewable energy generation become more predictable and reliable? Renewable power operators are coming up with new strategies to counter such variability.
For the renewable energy to really be useful, we got to capture the solar, wind and hydro, all three together, especially the way the Indian Peninsula has been blessed with.
Greenko has diversified into wind, solar and hydropower. Solar plants allow the company to generate power during the day, while their wind turbines kick into high gear at night. And during summer and monsoon months, their hydropower plants complement their overall energy generation. This allows Greenko as a company to generate power 24/7, similar to fossil fuel powered plants. This vast network of power plants spread across India is monitored via a central control room.
This room is where the wind, solar, hydro plant information comes in, and this is the cockpit from where we operate. The information that we receive here in terms of zillions of bytes of data that come in is important for us to make sure that we are constantly tracking the actual energy that we generate to its maximum potential.
Every machine has a theoretical capacity of generating power. However, the actual power generation is often lower, and the engineers sitting in the control room are constantly trying to reduce this gap. To do that, they need to monitor the natural resource itself, that is wind, the sun or water, and the machinery that's tapping the energy.
The information that we receive here is extremely granular. I'm going to give you some instances. Start with wind. We have the power curve, which is nothing but a measure of what power it should generate for a given amount of wind that blows.
The control room monitors every turbine in every wind farm. And if the generation from any turbine is lagging, an alarm is immediately raised to address the issue. It is equally crucial for the control room to predict the weather. After all, that determines how much power the plant is going to generate. Weather prediction is a very tricky operation. Think of it as a mathematical equation. Input numbers such as pressure, temperature, humidity, and you get a prediction. But the actual weather often varies from the prediction. Companies like Greenko use artificial intelligence to study how much the reality differed from the prediction and improves the original equation.
These are the 21 hydro plants that we have, and as you can see here, the ones with the orange color are the ones which are not receiving water. However, we have some plants in the Himachal that are receiving water, and you can see in these 4 plants we are actually over the 100 level. That's what we call as the overload, so we are able to get sufficient amount of water.
Meanwhile, a cloud hovers somewhere over a solar power plant, and the control room immediately notices the effect.
You can see here the power generation is suffering here either because of some cloud cover that has come onto that region, and as the cloud cover passes by, you are able to get it back. So in other words, sitting over here and looking at these screens, you are able to precisely find out what is the performance of your plant at this point in time and be able to take quick decisions.
By investing in technology to monitor machines and weather, artificial intelligence to interpret the raw data, renewable energy companies are making clean forms of energy practical to use. It is allowing India to take huge strides in switching to renewable power. But what does it take to build a solar park like the one in Kurnool? Frenetic activity grips 5,000 acres in the Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh, site of a 1 gigawatt ultra mega solar park. The first solar power plant to be connected to the national grid. It represents a massive leap for India's Mission Solar, one that leapfrogs India's efforts to adopt renewable energy with both arms. The largest parcel of the solar plant, producing about 500 megawatts, is being developed by Greenko.
It is the biggest project that has been done by any single developer in India.
India has committed itself to set up 100 gigawatts of solar power by 2022. 60% of this target, or 60,000 megawatts, will be met by large-scale power plants.
Out of that, this particular park where the project is being built is a 1,000 megawatt park in a single place. It is the largest single park anywhere in the world, 1,000 megawatts in a single place. And our project, it's a small part of that, it's almost half of that. It's 500 megawatts of AC capacity with about 816 megawatts of DC capacity, which makes it one of the world's largest parks held by a single owner. And as a proportion to the national target of 60,000 megawatts, it's probably close to about 5%. So 5% of the national target till 2022 is being met by this single park right now. That's how big it is.
Big ambition comes with big challenges. On this project, Greenko has less than half the time to have it operational. Normally, it would take 3 times longer to complete a project of this scale.
What we're trying to achieve in 6 months, it typically takes 12 to 18 months for any good season play in India. Elsewhere in the world, it takes usually 3 years.
What explains the rush? For that, we need to go back to the target India has set for itself. Right now, renewable energy sources contribute 51 gigawatts of power. That's roughly 6% of India's total power generation. To reach the target of 175 gigawatts by 2022, India will have to add 25 gigawatts of renewable power every year between 2017 and 2022. And that will only take the share of renewable energy to 19% of India's total power mix. Meanwhile, India's hunger for power is set to grow. According to International Energy Agency, India's power requirements will surge to 1,000 gigawatts by 2040. That's nearly 3 times the power India generates right now. With the right push, over 50% can come from renewable energy and nuclear sources. The Kurnool Ultra Mega Solar Park will act as a blueprint for future large-scale renewable energy projects.
The project of this scale again was something which we have not embarked as a group in this timeline. So we had certain doubts, or we had to educate ourselves, we had to prepare ourselves, and also bring in the confidence across all the stakeholders, our contractors, our supply chain partners, our financing partners, the board and the global institutions which need to support this. We took that leap of faith.
Greenko managed to raise $500 million within 30 days. It's a reflection of the confidence that financial institutions have in the renewable energy sector. Meanwhile, planners went into a huddle to figure out the best way to execute this project.
So the typical way you do a project is you do engineering and you come to your procurement and you come to your construction. So it's normally sequentially placed. We didn't have the luxury of that. So we had to crash processes and activities so that they ran parallelly.
Every few weeks we had a different challenge and different problem to solve.
A large project is complex even in the best circumstances. But when you're up against a tight deadline, even the smallest of errors can derail the execution.
Logistics was a big challenge. We're importing panels from China and the Far East, and this itself involved about 4,500 to 5,000 containers moving from ports like Shanghai into Krishnapatnam and Chennai, all in a span of just a month.
These containers had to be moved across hundreds of kilometers to the site's remote location.
Because these are large containers which require 45-foot trailers. We had a big problem in actually arranging the trailers. So we had to look all over the country to bring trailers into these ports and then move them to the site.
With one eye constantly on the supply chain, Greenko began deploying teams on the ground. With that came another challenge. The number of contractors and workers normally deployed for a project of this nature would not be able to meet the deadline, and that was simply not an option. Greenko had to partner with 25 different contractors to execute the work at site. The level of coordination required increased exponentially. At the height of work, there were about 5,000 workers on the site. But moving resources alone was not enough.
Kurnool is a 500 megawatt project, and at any given day there are about a few tens of thousands of activities that need to be accomplished in the day.
And these activities are monitored, planned, and coordinated remotely, harnessing the power of technology.
Complex projects being delivered to stiff timelines, the only way that can be done is to break these tasks to simpler, actionable insights and provide them back as a single source of truth to all the decision makers in the food chain that need to take a call.
In this current world, to implement the business successfully, technology is key, especially for us, where we are putting ourselves into a challenging and ambitious timelines and size of projects with the timelines. For me, the data is key.
We needed something out of the box, something that would quickly integrate decision makers, execution, various points on the ground for supply chain, and ensure seamless information flow.
To do this, every single bit of information is collated and fed to a central control center. Using intelligent algorithms, the information is analyzed and put forth as actionable data. It's a bird's eye view to minutely monitor progress being made and to address any issue that may crop up.
The room you see at the back is, we call it the war room. The idea of the war room is to get real-time information from the site where the work is happening into the decision-making process at the head office here. We have the entire logistics chain being captured. So I know how many trucks are moving out of factories, how many trucks are in transit, how many containers are in transit, how many have reached the site, how many have been sent back after unloading. The entire end-to-end view of your supply chain, whether it's imports or domestic. That's one data point that you have there, streaming live into the war room. The other equally important part is we have the progress of work getting captured in real time. So how many piles have been done, how many panels have been erected, how many of your control rooms are being built, and we have photographs being sent at 2-hourly intervals which can also get captured into the image database.
It's not just technology, but it's also trying to blend it into the manner, into the workflows that the business currently is running this project.
So we had close to 20 tabs being given to our field execution supervisors who were putting down the data as and when it happened, signed off by quality, and that data stream coming into the war room here, which gave a sense of where we were going and where we were not actually showing progress, and which required remedial action.
Public social media platforms like WhatsApp were connected to the war room. Groups were created for various teams, such as engineering, execution, supply chain, and quality issues. By integrating commonly used apps into its project planning, Greenko managed to cut down the learning curve for its teams.
So all we do is unintrusively join the group and find out what's happening there. So it allows us to eavesdrop and understand what challenges they're facing and bring them back into the management and say, hey, what can you do about some of these challenges that they're having?
Man, machine, and an intelligent hive of circuitry have kept the project on track. It exemplifies that India's ultimate aim, while lofty, is not impossible to achieve. Kurnool, Andhra Pradesh. Engineers are rushing to meet the tight 6-month deadline to finish a 1 gigawatt ultra mega solar park that's going to change the face of solar energy in India. But planners quickly realize they have a huge challenge. They simply don't have enough hands to set up this gigantic park within the deadline.
It was extremely difficult to do this kind of scaling with the normal process of recruitment and training. What we decided to do instead was to do a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking.
The choices we had is obviously to bring these large teams from various parts of the country, or to find a way to train semi-skilled and skilled teams within 100-kilometer radius of the project location.
Parmeshwar Naidu was one among 250 pass-outs from the Industrial Training Institute, hired by Greenko. Parmeshwar was looking for a job that would lend more meaning to his work, offer him better growth opportunities. Unfortunately, such opportunities are hard to come by in a remote area like Kurnool. But the Kurnool Ultra Mega Solar Park came as a ray of hope.
We established the training centers, our larger implementation facilities, whereby we are hiring actually localized polytechnic and ITI graduate students and training them specific towards solar and wind and hydro implementation and operational capabilities.
This project has a bigger impact beyond just the energy and the cost of energy. It did create a huge pool of trained resource base for the country.
Renewable energy is a labor-intensive industry. According to some estimates, this sector will create 1.1 million jobs by 2022. But the skills required for the sector are scarce. So even the skilled workforce in the country needs to be brought up to speed.
It's like jumping off a building and trying to grow wings on the way down and hoping that you don't hit the ground.
A training center was set up on the site to bring the diploma holders up to modern standards of operations. They were given short-term intensive training to set up solar power plants. This included the assembly and mounting of solar panel, troubleshooting problems, and supervising cabling operations.
ఇప్పుడు సెగ్నాల్లో వచ్చేసి సోలార్ పవర్ ప్లాంట్ పడినందుకు నాకు చాలా దగ్గర ఉంది. మినిమం నాకు వచ్చేసి 10 minutes పడుతుంది. మంచి మంచి సార్లు వస్తున్నారు. ట్రైనింగ్లో మాకు సార్ వాళ్ళు బాగా ఫిట్నెస్ మాగింది, బాగా చూపిస్తున్నారు. 6 months ట్రైనింగ్ అయిపోయిన తర్వాత దీనిలో జాబ్ సంపాదిస్తాను.
Right now they are working with us, they have helped us construct this plant, and their contribution to construction is phenomenal. And we believe that at the end of this project, when they actually go out, we will have at least 250 odd very skilled people who can construct solar projects on their own without much of supervision and much of oversight.
The plant has also brought other benefits in its way. Today, residents of Sekunala enjoy the benefits of well-paved roads, sewer lines and RO plant to purify drinking water.
ఇలాంటి సోలార్ ప్రాజెక్టు ఇండియాలో ఎక్కడైనా సరే వస్తే అటువంటి ఏరియా వాళ్ళు కూడా బాగుపడతారని మేము సంతోషపడుతున్నాం సార్.
Because of this scale-up project, which is the world's largest single solar park in a particular area, it has put not only Kurnool district but also India on the global map.
While the Kurnool Ultra Mega Solar Park leads the wave of clean energy projects set to come up in India, the real test lies in whether renewable power can become the mainstay of India's power requirements. So what does the future hold for renewable energy? The Kurnool Ultra Mega Solar Park. The first solar plant in India to feed directly into the national grid. It is the front runner in India's mega plan to switch to clean power. The project highlights the maturity and advancement of the renewable energy sector in India and is an important first step to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels such as coal, gas, or oil to generate electricity.
Well, if you talk to people in the energy business here in India, a country of 1.3 billion people, they'll tell you it's very, very unlikely that India will ever build another new coal or gas plant. Renewables are becoming simply too attractive.
It's highly important to make renewable energy as a backbone of our energy system, which is largely dominated by coal at this point.
Fossil fuels such as coal, gas and oil not only pollute the environment, but also cause a big drain on India's economy, since most of these fuels are imported into the country.
Raw materials like coal or oil are commodities, and commodities don't benefit from knowledge. If you put the price of commodities on a graph, they are what economists call a random walk. So prices go up and down depending on supply and demand, but basically they stay within a band. Solar energy, wind power, batteries, hydro, those are manufactured technologies. They benefit from learning curves. The more you learn, the more the price goes down. The more the price goes down, the demand goes up. The more the demand goes up, the more you get to learn.
So how do we make renewable energy the mainstay of India's energy requirements?
Whether or not it becomes a mainstay, it is going to be more determined by how the technology evolves as far as storage systems are concerned.
Intermittent supply of renewable energy can be addressed through batteries and hydro-pumped storage solutions. For instance, solar power generated during the day can be stored in batteries and then fed into the grid at night when demand for electricity peaks. It is the next logical step in the evolution of the renewable energy sector.
The past 10 years, Greenko was focused and put efforts to bring the renewable energy on par with the fossil fuel energy in terms of cost. Today we have taken renewable energy projects to a gigawatt scale, which are capable of supplying energy to large-scale industries. Now, Greenko is taking the lead in making the renewable energy available round the clock through large-scale and cost-effective storage solutions.
However, the cost of storage is currently extremely high.
If you have to actually implement a project using along with a storage system, the cost of generation is still continues to be double of what it is, for a regular solar project. So if the storage costs decline, and we are expecting them to decline going forward, but the pace of decline will clearly determine whether renewable energy becomes the mainstay of the overall energy markets or not.
cost of storage can be driven down through innovation. For instance, Greenko is investing in pumped storage hydroelectricity. In this system, power generated by solar power during the day is used to pump water to artificial reservoirs. In the evening, when demand for power peaks, this water is released to operate turbines that generate electricity. Another way to bring down the cost of any technology is to scale up the demand.
If you go in a big way, then rates will come down. Ultimately, this is the best solution for India, and I'm totally confident India can produce power at a very cost-effective compared to any other country in the world.
The holy grail in all of these is storage. Will we get batteries that big and that lasting? And the answer is clearly yes. We're very, very close already. That's why you have Indian utilities actually now plugging solar into the grid. And I think in the next 5 years, this is just going to get better and better and more efficient. And then as the price of those panels go down, you have a real bingo when you put those two together.
For India, the renewable energy is the new source of oil. The economic activity which renewable energy can create in the next 5 years, in terms of investments, economic activity, job creation, other forms of social impact, can be much, much higher than any other oil and gas sector can have in the country.
More importantly, it helps India reduce a huge chunk of carbon emissions that's already playing havoc with the environment.
It's not an option anymore for not adopting renewable energy at this scale. It's only path forward for a country of more than 1 billion population and for the next generation to really survive on this planet.
Mission Clean India is part war cry and part beacon of hope for a sustainable energy future, which Greenko envisions will be founded on the 3 Ds, that is decarbonized, decentralized and digitized energy systems for India and the world.